How do we make sense of the world? This has been the theme for our content over the course of this week. We had a session on the podcast with Alexander Beiner looking at what sense-making means and how we use some of the sense-making tools to make sense of the world. I did a piece on sense-making and sovereignty, and we were joined on Monday night by Alexander for a deep dive workshop where our participants had the opportunity to experience firsthand some of the powerful sense-making tools that are available to us to help us to navigate these unique times. Because let's be real, we are in a unique set of circumstances whereby trust is being lost in mainstream media and institutions, yet we have this proliferation of the alternative media landscape. Every day there's new Substacks being launched or podcasts or blogs, and as such, the information ecosystem has become very much vast, and the traditional credibility and trust factors or markers are not available to us. So we have to be able to, the eye of the discernment comes into our own hands. You know, how do we determine what we can trust and what is credible? How do we make sense, therefore, of the world, even if we don't have domain expertise? So making sense of everything that's happening in the world right now, whether it's COVID, the conflict in Ukraine, climate, politics, energy crisis, whatever the flavor of the month is, requires a real set of skills beyond just critical thinking. And actually, one of the things that I've learned over the last year or so is that sense making is not an individual sport in the sense that it's a shared experience. Our ability to learn from one another is key. Yet during times like this, our ability to communicate with one another is challenged. So during the workshop this week, we had an amazing experience being able to go through some of those skill sets. And in this video, I'm recording this really as a blatant plug for the, an unashamedly blatant plug for the Rebel Wisdom Sensemaking 101 course, which begins tonight at 8 p.m. I've had the privilege of going through this course myself earlier this year, and I'll actually take you behind the scenes to the course materials themselves. So I'll show you what I went through and what you'll go through too if you take the course, the opportunity to go through the course. But before I do that, I want to share some of the feedback from the practical session on Monday night, where we just went through a handful of less than a handful of tools that are available to us when it comes to the different mindsets, practices, and tools that can be utilized for sense making and getting a sense of what's happening in the world. I'll read out the quotes to you. I genuinely found this so interesting and enlightening. To have such an experience without interruption really brought out a lot of people's genuine frustrations and concerns about what is happening in the world. Secondly, I feel empowered having conversations like this. These types of experiences can help us to find the gaps in our knowledge. Being part of sessions like these helped me to figure things out and reveal the potential for people to break away from an over-reliance on external systems. Thirdly, I felt uncensored. It was liberating to speak my thoughts into words. It felt like I was able to reflect in real time and be truly heard. It gave me a light bulb moment about how my concerns about the world had stopped me from realizing how I can improve my own health. And then lastly, it was wonderful to hear experiences across borders. I felt very much validated and accepted amongst perfect strangers. It enabled me to connect with the emotions that I felt. These are just a handful of, or less than a handful of reflections from the course that we ran on Monday. It was simply a taster session for the Sensemaking 101 course, using just one or two of the key tools from the overall program. And the reason why I'm partnering with Rebel Wisdom on this, firstly, because of the external environment that we are facing. It's quite frankly one of the most daunting times to be alive in terms of what's happening in the world. The fact that we cannot trust the media means that we have a gaping void in terms of how we understand and navigate the world. And whilst, yes, we can turn to alternative sources, ultimately we need to be able to develop the skills to recognize what's happening in a way that doesn't lead us into rabbit holes or biases, to really get a deeper sense of the complexity of all the different things that are happening right now. Secondly, because I had such a powerful experience myself, I want to share it with others. And lastly, ultimately, I believe the path to sovereignty is really our own ability to take ownership of our sense making and evaluation. So regardless of what sources we're using, we're able to come to our own conclusions, again, beyond just critical thinking, actually using a whole range of other tools. So I'm going to very quickly take you through the sense making course materials. Here you'll find, if you're a user of the Elevate network, we use the same platform to host our community. It's called Mighty Networks. It's a third-party tool. We'll be using the course feature coming up in the near future, actually, ourselves. But within the Rebel Wisdom Mighty Networks, this is where they host their courses. So I took part in the Spring faculty earlier this year. And it was a 7-week course, and I'll just walk you through how it works. So all of the once you register, all of this course material week by week becomes available to you. Every single week there's new materials released, and there's some really comprehensive tools within this that I think are really worth signposting. So firstly, the workbook itself. The workbook is broken down over 8 weeks, or 7 or 8 weeks. It's a 200-page piece of work where every single week it's broken down into chunks, and you'll go through different parts of the process. That in itself, to me, in terms of the learning experience just from the workbook alone, I quite honestly think is worth the investment in the course. But every single week you get the workbook, you get some pre-learning material, and then you have a live session. And then to complement the live session, you meet separately with a group of 3 or 4 that you're assigned to, based upon your time zones and availability, to actually digest the material. So you actually learn the material through the videos and the workbook and the practical sessions with the instructors. And then you have a pod session, which is a small group independently going through the material to actually embody and practice the skill sets, which I think is a cracking format, blended learning over the course of each week. Now, to be honest, a course like this is a classic case of you can get as much out of it as you're willing to put in or able to put in. But that said, even if you just kind of skim the surface by attending the live sessions and reading the sections of the workbook, you'll still get an enormous amount of value. You can go really deep on some of these things. And if you're anything like me, you want to learn more about each of these different subjects and how you can use them. So it can take a lot more time if you're really curious and want to expand your knowledge even further. But it's very well laid out for you to manage the learning experience at your own pace. And of course, you can see that I've got legacy access still, so I can still go back and go over all the materials once more. So I'm just going to go through the various different modules really quickly. So the first week is an introduction to the course, the early introductions to some of the premises and what to expect. You have some initial inquiry processes together within in the session, so it kind of sets a grounding for the areas that you're looking to make sense of. You're connecting with others and learning what they're trying to understand in the world. You're learning about people's different challenges. It's a really grounding and connecting experience in the first week. You'll set up your first pod. You'll get to know your pod members, and you go through some of the foundational learning. Secondly, in week 2, you're with John Vervaeke. Now, if you don't know John Vervaeke, John Vervaeke comes with a warning sign. John is one of the most genius level people I've ever had the opportunity to meet. He's a cognitive scientist, and he has a variety of other titles as well. I won't underplay him. But he's done an enormous amount of work on meaning and how we can find meaning in the world. And this particular session, you may need a glossary for. I would say with John, you need some background understanding, which is why for this particular module, having the video and the workbook in advance is probably a positive idea. But I can't stress enough, having the opportunity to connect with someone like John and hear from John is a remarkable experience. He has a podcast called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, where there are over 50 different episodes, which you can access. I did try to share my screen just then to share it with you on Spotify, but it's called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis with John Vervaeke. And each one of those is like a lecture. I think it even is a lecture series from his academic work. So in week 2, you were John Vervaeke, looking at some of the cognitive science behind sense making. In week 3, you go into a session with Alexander Beiner, who's the overall host of the course, looking at some of the different tools like meditation, mindfulness, journaling, breath work, really about bringing us into our body and tuning into our senses. The clue is in the title, sense making. We require all of our senses in order to make sense of the world. Our brain, our mind is constantly distorting, generalizing, and piecing together our experience of the world. And if we're able to heighten our senses, it actually deepens our ability to make sense of the world. So you go through a whole range of practical tools in week 3 with Alexander, really connecting with the inner self. In week 4, joined by Diane Musho Hamilton to look at the shadow and how we relate to ourselves and each other. And that shadow work for me was where I had some of my biggest breakthroughs. I was able to witness some of the patterns that were playing out in my own life, which were limiting not only my ability to sense make, but actually my ability to relate to others, and even some of my challenges with productivity. So that was a really, really powerful week. And then nicely followed into week 5 with Sarah Ness, Making Sense Together. This is probably one of the most important modules in my view in terms of the challenges we've specifically faced over the last 2 years, dealing with issues like COVID-19, where there's been such polarization and division. In this workshop, you really learn some of the not only the theories of communication and how people see the world and how people how people communicate around these types of issues, but how you can use those tools to then communicate with others. It's a really, again, it's really experiential. You have the opportunity to kind of put yourself in different people's shoes to understand how they see the world and how they communicate and how they consume information. So it helps you to understand then how to communicate in a way that best suits that individual. It's a really powerful module. There was so much breaking material in there that was that I'd heard for the first time. I was really, really impressed. Week 6, we start to go more into the outer world with David Fuller, into sense-making culture and the media, looking at how we consume media, looking at how we analyze media, looking at how we dissect media. Within this week, there was a reverse media diet where we essentially go and look at the polar opposite viewpoints of our current focus. Very revealing to do so, and to do so in a way that is not free from the triggers that we normally feel when we're kind of engaging online, but just simply seeking to soak up different perspectives. Really fascinating to do that exercise. But again, there's a whole lot of work around how we evaluate media. And in the course that I was part of, we had Daniel Schmachtenberger, who talked about what's known as the meta crisis and how all of these different crises intersect and how they interlink and what some of the common threads are and what the bigger picture really looks like and how we can sense make the complexity and the uncertainty of that big picture. This time around, it's Jonathan Rowson, who is a chess master. He's an incredible guy. We're hoping to have him on the podcast soon, actually. Who's behind so many of the kind of sense-making communities. He's heavily involved in this type of work, particularly around systems change, looking at the bigger picture. So Jonathan Rowson's in for Daniel for this course. And then finally, in the final week, you get to wrap up. You share your kind of revelations and your breakthroughs and understandings, and kind of discuss what's next in your own sense-making journey. So it's really comprehensive, as I mentioned. What I really loved about it was the fact that it is a blended learning experience, self-guided through the workbook, the films each week, the live sessions, and then the independent group sessions. So there's really 4 different components every single week. And as I said, you can kind of put as much time in or as little time in as you wish. Now, comment on Rebel Wisdom. I think they're a fascinating organization. They're coming to a conclusion at the end of this year. Their final event is in November. They've been together since 2018. There's been some really fascinating content that they've put out there. There's a lot of things, I confess, that I don't necessarily agree with. And again, that's all part of this. It's part of the sense-making process to surround ourselves with people, yes, who are seeking insights that kind of correlate with our own, but also challenging ourselves to examine different points of view. So don't allow someone's different worldview on certain things to become a barrier. To me, that was actually a real plus point. And within the course itself, it's about the practices, the principles. It's not about the views of David and Alexander. It's really focused on the facilitation of the experience. I just wanted to make that comment just in case you had any pre-existing views on Rebel Wisdom. Here's the workbook. This is week 1. Again, it's broken down into individual components. Lots of things for you to read. Lots of things to kind of fill out and go through, but it's not very heavy. It's not. You can see it's not a lot of heavy lifting in terms of what's required of you. But there is background reading and some tasks to undertake, which you will then share within your pods, etc. Now, if you are interested in joining, the website to join at is rebelwisdom.co.uk/sensemaking101. It starts tonight at 8 p.m, so get your skates on if you want to join. All the stuff is recorded, so if you do miss the first week, it's not the end of the world. And in fact, the real deep stuff kicks in on week 2. Week 1 is a really good grounding and connecting experience where you get to meet other people and see what they're grappling with in terms of their own sense making. But if you miss week 1, the live session, it's all recorded. You can watch it later on. But here's the sign up page, rebelwisdom.co.uk/sensemaking101. And the good news is we have a partnership offer with Rebel Wisdom. If you use the code ELEVATE10, that's capital ELEVATE _ the number 10. You'll get the code in the email with this video anyway. You can get 10% off the access price. It's a £295 investment in the course. There are some scholarships available if the price point is beyond your reach. It may be too late to access those now, but it's always worth a try if that's your situation. And with things like this, people think about in terms of price. I think in terms of value, and I understand right now you've got the cost of living crisis, inflation, and lots of unknowns. But if you do have the resources or resourcefulness to join something like this, then it is one of the most powerful courses that I've been through. And I like to think in terms of value. And I've been part of courses that are, 10 times the price of this, that offer far less value than this particular course in terms of the overall experience, the learning experience, and the growth that you'll go through. So you can sign up via this page using the discount code ELEVATE10. Again, that's Elevate capital E. It is case sensitive _10, and you can get started tonight. Again, if you missed tonight's session, it's all recorded, and you'll have the opportunity to connect with the pod, etc. But I'll leave it there. I actually really like this graphic. If you take the time to read it through, there's so much wisdom just in this infographic itself about how we navigate the situation we're in. But yes, this is our first real partner offer. It's one that I'm thoroughly happy to endorse, having gone through it. You can see I've gone through it. I've just shown you the back end of my own unique login. I actually have also done another one of their courses recently, and my team, a member of my team, have been through it as well. We've done the embodiment and flow course. There's they offer various different courses, but yeah, if you're interested in taking part, please do take advantage of our discount code. We will do more offers like this in the future with organizations that we trust. So watch this space. If you do join up, sign up, do let us know. We'd love to hear about your progress. I'm particularly curious to learn about your insights, because I think there's going to be some great opportunities to share some of your learnings from this course with our community. And I would love to hear some of your insights as you're going along. So do keep us posted if you sign up. It will be the last course under the Rebel Wisdom banner. They are closing shop in November. It's unknown whether the course will end up in a different form, in a different place at another time, but certainly in its current format with its current faculty, it's the last opportunity to do this one. So there's a little bit of genuine urgency in terms of the fact it's starting tonight, and it's possibly your last opportunity to take this course in this form. So from us, there's no pressure at all for you to go ahead and start this course. Let us know what you think about presenting offers like this to you. We are looking out there for different opportunities to offer different avenues for growth for our members, and different ways to bring tools and practices that can enhance our own lives in the context of the work that we're doing. So your feedback is most welcome. And either way, whether you take part in the course or not, sense making is an integral component of the work that we're doing at Elevate, and we will undoubtedly continue to do some additional work ourselves around some of the practices and tools. But this course in particular is a really great starting point to, in a very short space of time, seriously up level your knowledge and skills in this area. All right, thanks very much for tuning in. Again, thoughts and feedback welcome. And lastly, if you're watching this today on Wednesday the 14th, look out for our broadcasts over the next few days. We're going to be over in Austria for the Better Way conference. As you know, that there was the recent conference in Bath, and following the event in Bath, there was an event in Brazil, and now the third conference taking place in Vienna this weekend. I'll be over there reporting on the content and what's happening. I'll also be presenting as part of a media panel. So watch this space over the next few days. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this short video, and here's to making sense of the world together. Peace out for now.